Gut, also willkommen zum letzten Vortrag am Sonntagabend. Ich mache was zum bisschen zum Mitdenken, aber auch mit zum Ausarbeiten, wenn man so will, weil wenn das alles so klappt und wenn ihr irgendwie dann bereit seid und die Ausrüstung habt, können wir auch ein paar sehr schnelle Aktionen machen. Der Vortrag oder das kleine Seminar baut ein bisschen auf den Sachen auf, die ich in den letzten Jahren schon gemacht habe. Beim ersten Source of the Renaissance habe ich euch gesagt, irgendwie wenn ihr da steht und wollt jemanden mit einem Ausfall treffen, seid ihr meistens zu langsam. So, weil ihr macht so eine Bewegung, um zum Ziel zu kommen. Euer Gegner hat beim Rapierfechten typischerweise schon die Klinge irgendwo hier. Der braucht so eine Bewegung, um euch die ganze Sache kaputt zu machen. Und schon klappt das nicht mehr. So. Und die Idee ist natürlich, wir wollen eigentlich im Fechten nur Dinge machen, die klappen. Und das sind nicht nur Trefferbewegungen gemeint, das sind auch so Vorbereitungsbewegungen für einen Treffer gemacht. So. Die Quintessenz war im Prinzip, wenn ich treffen will, muss ich mich Schritt für Schritt reinarbeiten. So, und jeder Schritt ist sicher, jeder Schritt hat Erfolg. Und dass diese Schrittchen sehr kurz sind, sichert so ein bisschen den Erfolg. Weil wenn ich eine kleine Aktion mache, sinkt die Chance, dass mein Gegner in dem Moment was dagegen tun kann. Für diejenigen, die mit Zeitplanung im Fechten noch nie nennenswert zu tun hatten, die Grundannahme ist immer, wenn ich mich beim Fechten mit irgendwas bewege, kann ich in der Zeit nichts anderes machen. Das heißt, wenn ich so die Klinge zur Seite nehme und in dem Moment geht der andere rum, muss ich diese Bewegung erst abbrechen und erst dann komme ich hin. So, kann man ganz banal demonstrieren. Ich setze mir mal die Maske auf und ich nehme ein Papier in die Hand. Cornelius, du bist doch sehr fix. Ich gucke mal, wie weit der Maskenlatz runtergeht, ob es dann zu sehr rauscht, aber gucken wir mal. Willkommen in meiner Maske. So, die Idee ist wie folgt, wenn Cornelius einfach sein Rapier so nach vorn hält, ich mache so eine Scheibenwische und er geht rum und trifft mich in der gleichen Zeit, schaffe ich das nicht wegzuwegen. Ich probiere das mal schneller, ich gehe rum und er trifft mich. Ich gehe rum, er trifft mich. Bah. So. Dankeschön. Leuchtet total ein. Also das Wichtige ist, das ist eine Bewegung, in der ich festhänge. Er nutzt die Zeit, um rumzukommen. Und bevor ich das Ding abgestoppt habe, also Bewegung ist zu Ende und neue Bewegung zum Abwehren geht los und wird ihm gefährlich, ist das Ding drin. Ja? Diese eine Bewegung, in der ich festhänge und die er ausnutzen kann, braucht eine gewisse Zeit. Deswegen haben die Italiener das Tempo genannt. So eine Fechtzeit, also quasi eine Zeiteinheit im Fechten. Das Interessante ist gar nicht mal so, dass in der Zeit, wo ich rumgehe, er mich treffen kann. Das Interessante ist, wenn ich danach noch versuche, das wegzuparieren, ich halt zu spät bin. So. Und das ist ein Element, was wir gleich einsetzen werden, nämlich dieses, wenn mein Gegenüber Gelegenheit hat, was zu machen und ich versuche unmittelbar danach, das abzuwehren oder im Fortgeschrittenen, ich versuche irgendwie einen Doppeltreffer zu provozieren, darf das dann eigentlich nicht möglich sein. So kann ich mir ein sicheres Fechtsystem aufbauen, wo ich von einer kontrollierten Position zur nächsten komme. Und wir fangen mal mit der banalsten Sache an, nämlich wir stellen uns einander gegenüber. Und zwar haben wir eine Mensur, wo, wenn wir die Waffen ausstrecken, wir ungefähr Spitze an Kreuz sind. So, Pi mal Daumen. Wenn Cornelius jetzt einen Ausfall auf mich macht, müsste er mich treffen können, und zwar so, dass sich die Klinge gesund durchbiegt. So, gesund durchbiegen heißt, wir haben eine halbwegs passable Eindringtiefe der Klinge und damit wird alles schöner. So, probiere das mal trocken, triff mich, bap. Genau. Mindestens so viel Biegung möchte ich sehen, wenn eure Klingen das mitmachen. Nochmal, bap. Genau. So, wenn er das ganze Ding als eine Aktion denkt, braucht er halt genau diese Zeit. Von Bewegungsanfang bis Treffer braucht die Zeit. Ich habe meine Klinge hier, die ist ungefähr so 30 cm von seiner weg. Sobald ich sehe, dass er auf mich zukommt, versuche ich das Ding wegzuparieren. Genau. Und er hat wie ich eine Sportfechtvorbildung, das heißt eigentlich weiß er, wie man sich unglaublich schnell nach vorn katapultiert. Das wird nicht klappen. Wir machen es noch dreimal. Ich werde mal richtig verlegen, ich lege die mal richtig weit runter, mal sehen, ob es danach klappt. Sogar. Ich hoffe, das haben alle gesehen, denn das werde ich nicht wiederholen. Dankeschön. So, und diese wahnsinnig frustrierende Aufgabe werde ich euch jetzt mal zum Trainieren geben. Das heißt, stellt euch einander gegenüber. Wenn ihr nur eine Maske habt, müsst ihr auf die Maske zielen. Ansonsten ist die Brust ein schöneres Ziel. Abstand so, dass ihr in Fechtstellung bei locker ausgestreckten Armen Spitze an Kreuz seid. Gegner hat sein Rapier so 30 cm, so 2 Spannen weiter zur Seite. Ihr versucht mit einer schnellen Bewegung die Brust zu treffen. Der andere versucht, sobald er das Hinkommen sieht, zu parieren. Okay, auf geht's. I can also do a voice-over for the first part. Like.
This is me doing a workout.
All right, so if you don't mind me, I'll continue in English. So that didn't really work well, did it? Okay, so does anyone remember, maybe from the first source of the Renaissance or from somewhere else, what you can do to avoid this problem? How can you make sure that when you really strike, when you're going for a hit, you can have success? Maybe even against someone who's like just waiting to parry your attack. What do you remember?
We're basically getting closer by whipping our foot forward.
Yeah. So, and in terms of timing, this means instead of one long motion, we do fewer shorter motions. How many of these depends on the system. With Fabris, you can have up to 3. For the first source of the Renaissance, my workshop had the title 1 lunge, 2 tempi, what we can all learn from Fabris. And afterwards, I learned that strictly speaking, you can do even 3, like 1, 2, 3. And we're going to do that next. So, and to this end, it's up to you how acrobatic you get. So, the more acrobatic version is the following. Cornelius, can I borrow you again, please? So we start with the same setup, like this. What I'm going to do now is raise my front foot in the air that is sort of like 1 step further but floating above the ground. So, like here, and before, when putting it down, I do a strike. And his task is pretty much the same as we just did. He's like 30 centimeters apart, or 2 spans. And as soon as he sees the final strike, not the preparation, but only the final strike, he tries to parry. So I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this already increases my chance of success. That was planned. Speaking of success, thank you. If you don't think you have the Fabrisian acrobatics, you do it like this. You put it on the ground, like 1 step further, without shifting your body, and then you just do this. It's not just doing this, there's more to it, but we will come to that later. So it's like this, and here you initiate your final movement, the movement that actually is supposed to make a hit. Does it make sense? Okay. The correction, basically the stress test element, as I just said, is like before. 30 centimeters, you start with like either keeping the front floating or putting it down, and then you go in. Strictly speaking, when I now react, I should be too late. Understood? Excellent. Give this a try. Either stay with your partner or find a new one, depending on what you prefer. And if there are any severe questions, just raise your hand and or shout my name. All right, give it a go, please. If you at least feel an improvement there, that you have a better chance of success when you sort of like subdivide the tempo. You say like 1, 2. Did it work? Did it work? Was there anyone for whom it didn't work? Yeah, but it's pretty new. But could you see the general direction and the sense of it then at least? Excellent. Okay. There are a few things you have to keep an eye out to make this right, and Florian just described them. Could you please repeat them? So sorry, I just let you do the work. So what do you want to look out for in order to make this work in terms of body mechanics?
Okay. So don't try to, if you lift the leg, try to be stable in position and like getting upright or leaning back so you can balance. That's straightening the leg and the gravity will pull you forward. Because if I try to lift up, I'm too slow with pushing. But if I lift my leg and then come forward, gravity will help the lunge.
Yeah. That's a really important issue, thank you. And we'll gather a few more, but this is already touching upon the topic of this seminar. So there are a few things you can do to mess things up. One is like, withdraw your arm while you're doing it, because then it needs more time to land. lifting your, or like say, leaning back with your torso, in like this, for instance, and also like standing up like this. In the instructions that we have for this kind of proceeding, they say you should have your entire weight grounded on the rear foot. So when I was in Vienna, I jokingly said that this is like the European equivalent of a Shaolin Kung Fu exercise, like with 2 water buckets. You have to be able to hold this for a minute or maybe 10 minutes. And I want you to try this now. So the important thing is we make this gap, this little pause in between movements, so we can make sure the final hit is quick enough. But also, if someone does something weird in the middle, like they try to parry, we still have a chance to react, because I'm now moving, now I'm in a moment of stillness. And in a moment of stillness, I can act because I'm not moving. So remember what we said earlier, every time you move your limbs, you're stuck in this movement. Stephen Perlman, the author of the Book of Martial Power, calls this frozen in motion. And it's basically like, if I move here and if someone else comes here, I have to stop this motion first and then go back, and then it's too late. It's the same thing with this, or with this basically, but also here. So for the next exercise, basically the same setup. Try to be a bit more precise with emotions. Kick your leg forward, have a mental pause, and then you go in. All right, does it make sense? Yeah. A few more repetitions, not as long as before, and then we gather in when I shout at you. That's actually quite good. Could you repeat that in English, please, just for the record? Literally for the record.
He's too quick, so he makes always this here. And so I know when he is making the punch. So he has to stay longer in the air, so that I can't say when he's making the punch. So how could you punish him? If you think like he's still doing it like as one motion, more or less. Yeah. How could you punish him? Any idea? I might try to make a punch on myself. Yeah, you could basically, the idea is, here you have what Capo Ferro calls a moment of stillness. So movement, stillness. And stillness means you can decide. So if at that point you do something, he has to be able to react in a meaningful way. And the thing we will try to do now is, if I may borrow you again. As soon as we see the foot is lifted, as a teacher or opponent, training partner, we disengage. And I want my student to go, if I disengage, just rotate the hand and do a thrust like this. Or if we start here on the inside, if he has raised the foot, I disengage, and he does a thrust like this. Either in second, if you want to do it like Fabris, you can also do it in terza. But this is like our simulation of we do it like this. Now something is happening, and because we have a brief moment of stillness, we can react, and we do something else. We abandon our plan A of going in directly, but add a plan B. So the tricky part now is if you as a teacher say, okay, I'm not going to tell you if I remain still or if I disengage when you raise the foot. Because then they always have to look out. They always have to go here and then do this, or here, or be prepared to readjust the hand and strike. And this is a very minor adjustment you have to do. You only have to rotate your hand, but it's already a point where you make a decision. So either plan A or plan B. Does it make sense? So try to train plan B a while, because we haven't done this yet. Like 1, 2. And if that works, try to randomize it and not tell your training partner whether you remain still or whether you disengage when they raise their foot. All right? Just a few repetitions. Doesn't have to be perfect, just to get the concept across. Okay, pair up and give it a try, please. Right. So did this sort of make sense? So if this is an entirely new movement pattern to you, it's probably to be expected that it's all very confused and so, but did it sort of make sense? Did you see at least like the glimmer at the horizon that sort of said, okay, it actually makes sense. All right. So, of course, what you would now have to do is, after any of these options, you would have to have your teacher trying to defend. But like picking the right moment and going there, picking the right technique is one thing. Doing it in their tempo so that anything they do to defend against it will be too late is another.
So this would be like the stress test element. They do this, and then they defend, but they're too late. And now we come to this, the title of this workshop. Does anyone remember the title of this workshop? Has anyone read the workshop description? Thanks. Maybe Stefan still remembers it because I wrote it to him when he asked about it. I think I called it something like the stillness that isn't still. And it's sort of one of those fancy titles, but it actually makes sense here. The idea is, the idea basically is, if you do this movement and basically, like Florian said, come to a complete still position like this, and then you go forward, this acceleration you need at this point probably takes you too long. So strictly speaking, you would have to think of the entire lunge. So you'd have to think of, like basically, tempo goes like here, and now if I don't do anything, I just fall down. So I do a controlled, slow falling down. So my stillness is not still. It's like an imperceptibly small reduction of speed, basically. I'm slowing down just a little. And in this little slowing down, I make my decision. So it's like 1, 2. And because I'm already in movement a bit, I cannot fall down with the entire body, because it says like until here, the body has to remain still. But still, the feet are moving like this, and then you go forward. And with this very slow movement, I have something like a running start. And it's easier to accelerate from here than from here. So, and I want you to give this a try. So we can go back to only plan A. Only we have a teacher who's waiting, and only if they see that the actual thrust is coming in, they try to defend. And as a student, I want you to try both things. Coming to a complete step and going in, and slowing down and going in then. Yeah? Make sure you're not moving your torso too much at this point. It's like mostly the foot, but the difference is between stillness, boom, and stillness, boom. If that makes sense. Okay, are there any questions? It is not clear to anyone what I'm getting at. Yeah.
For me, it looks like the same.
Okay, yeah. Devil is in the details. So it's basically here I'm completely still. Here I'm still sort of moving very slowly. So
that's where your body weight is regarding to the back leg. Like
yeah.
in the first one you had it all over your back leg.
Yeah.
And then you exploded.
Yeah.
And the second one you had it already in front, and then you could still explode.
Sort of.
You're already
Yeah.
forward.
So it's probably more about thinking you're already falling forward than you actually do fall forward. And there are differences between Fabris proper and the German students of Fabris who do it slightly differently, but I can go into details after the workshop if you want. But the idea is, here I stop completely and I start from 0 basically. Here I start from 5 maybe. So I'm still somewhat going forward. So if it makes a problem to you, you can also like move forward with your body a bit, but it shouldn't be too much. I don't want you to do it that much, but maybe a little. So you start from a movement that goes forward. You're not starting from stillness. Does it make sense now? Yeah, please.
You're passive, but gravity will make the movement. You're slightly out of balance. You don't move actively, but gravity will slowly pull you forward. You cannot resist, and then you accelerate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like it's controlled falling down, and you just like transform it into something like a lunge position. Okay, give this a try. It's probably the last exercise we are doing for today. All right, to summarize. Did most of you experience the difference that it makes from initiating the final motion from stillness or from slow movement? Did it make sense? It made sense for you, it just said? Did it work for anyone else?
It feels like cheating, right? Basically feels like cheating, getting closer without...
It is. So now, and you made an important point now, because only slowing down instead of coming to a point of stillness means, of course, it gets trickier to actually still react to something that goes on. So if you now, after the workshop, want to experiment with that, you can use the same setup with it coming forward, but then still reacting, for instance, against the disengage. So this still has to work. But what I noticed when you go full speed, so when Florian, for instance, and I, the few other people in the world who do like full force Fabris, as I like to call it, these details really matter. So, and there are some techniques that we do where if we don't accelerate quickly enough, they don't work. Because a lot of the techniques actually depend on you bringing the strong part of your sword into space. So, and this is actually much more important than like having a sideways displacement of the blade. So it doesn't work like this, it has to work like this. So, and if at this point I'm completely still, because having the stillness, that is correct, helps me to gain an awareness of the fact that I need moments of stillness to make decisions. So I cannot just like go in and do some kind of movement. But nevertheless, I have to imagine these moments of stillness as like a barely perceptible slowing down. So someone from the outside might not even know that I'm slowing down. So I might attack a lurking opponent, let's do it for the camera like this. So for me it's 1, 2, 3. And after every movement, I make a brief pause and see what's going on. But from the outside, it's sort of like one motion. So modern Olympic fencers might object that I'm moving the front foot first, and you never move the front foot first. Even in Olympic fencing, you can actually start the lunge and only decide for a thrust later, just in case someone is trying to tell us something different. But this is the idea. This was the main idea of the workshop, that moments of stillness mean you're still somewhat in motion, just carefully in motion, is an important thing. It's the most obvious in the andare di risoluzione, I think, like proceeding with resolution, or going for a walk, as Fabris's German students like to call it. Because with this kind of stepping, in my hypothesis at least, this is a tempo, here is the moment of stillness, but you see the foot is moving forward while you do it. Tempo stillness, tempo stillness, tempo stillness, tempo stillness. And of course, this makes you relatively fast. You still have these moments of stillness and you need them to actually meaningfully react to what your opponent is doing. But in the end, it only works sufficiently well when going for fencing on a high speed if you keep that speed going, if you stay in motion. Does it make sense on a surface level? It's probably applicable to other disciplines other than rapier as well, but that was the main point I was trying to make. Okay, thank you for your participation.